Well, just like a typical classroom, everybody sat in the back. Except for a couple of brown noses, which I love. Welcome to Gen Xers, Millennials, and iGens, oh my. This is a presentation that I did originally in 2019 at a conference for the Association of Food Service Professionals. And it's designed for leaders to just understand the different generations. The fact that we right now are leading literally 4 different generations. And here you have the unique position of not necessarily leading the 5th generation, but working for that generation. Again, welcome. I want to thank Jeff and Tina for giving me the opportunity to do this, and I hope that you get something out of it. We're going to start off with audience participation. Take a few minutes while I'm doing some talking. Fill out that little quiz. Yes, I gave you a quiz at 9:30 in the morning. And understand that when you do this, oh, by the way, if you don't have a pen, just look for the baby boomer next to you, because they probably have 2.
I know who I am.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable on my skin.
That's good, that's good. Understand that obviously this is not a scientific quiz in any way, shape, or form. It is a general feeling of where you may stand. There's also the reality that try and avoid those stereotypes, right? Just because you're a millennial doesn't mean you're a flake. I made sure I had to get that in. And there's more to come. But we tend to think about the certain generations or people of certain ages in different ways. And what the purpose of this presentation is to show us that although people react differently and act differently and think a little bit differently, ultimately we're all looking for one goal, and it's just a matter of how we go about leading those different people. And again, with those stereotypes, there's an example that across the board, folks from the Midwest, from farming areas, or if they're working in the field, have a very diligent work ethic. They might not be educated, they might be highly educated, but generally speaking, really good work ethic. There's a joke in there that I'm not going to land well at this point, but there's a reason why the UFOs always hit the middle of the country, right? Because they know where to find the hardest workers. Timing's a little bit off. So some of those stereotypes, right? And I did this just based on cell phones. So boomers, right? I now have this Facebook app, and again, don't remember, this is like 4 years old. App so I can send pics to my grandkids, and I was told when I joined Facebook that Facebook was for people 30 and over, and like Instagram and all those were but we look at these stereotypes and we either understand them because it does kind of relate to us, or it's usually kind of the butt of a joke also, right? My kids love saying, "Hey boomer," every time my wife and I tried to do something that was remotely fun. I sent a picture, a couple of years ago, we went to a club in New York City. I mean, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, we're at this club, disco lights, people on stilts, and I sent the selfie, and all I got back with was, "Hey boomer, really?" We're gonna concentrate really on the 4 generations that we are either leading or involved in, right? Those are baby boomers, Gen Z, Gen X, and Generation Y. Traditionalists, or the greatest generation, basically those folks who live here for the most part, right? By 2025, will only account for about 1% of the workforce. So, if that. So it's really not the focus here, it's more about the people that we are actually leading. So, what does the workforce look like? By 2025, we see that, well, first off, let me point something out. Every other generation has a smaller gap, and there's a reason for that, because of the spread of years when people are having babies, and it's also based on world events. So the excuse me, the baby boomers stretched almost 20 years from the years from basically by 2025 they're going to be between age 60 and 80 for the most part. Then we have Generation X, and technically Generation X born 1970, but I associate more with boomers. I grew up in a household with boomer parents. My 2 sisters are 8 and 12 years older, so I can associate more as a boomer. But here, we're only looking at about a 15-year gap, generally speaking. Then we get to the millennials. Now, millennials are a dichotomy. First of all, I can't believe that the oldest millennials are going to be in their mid to late 40s. I was telling Summer, I remember like when I was basically first managing, and I was like, oh, these millennials, man, they're so hard to manage, and this and that. And unfortunately, the smallest majority kind of gave that whole first half of that generation a bad rap. But again, we're looking at about a 20-year span for that generation. By 2025, millennials are going to overtake boomers and Gen Xers as the most people in the workforce. So those people that we complained about or thought, oh my God, we're going to be dead, this is who's taking care of us, are really going to be the leaders. They're taking over. Summer's going to be CEO someday, so we need to kiss her butt.
Metaphorically.
Yes. Thank you for saving me on that. That's right. And then we get into Generation Z, or the iGens. Youngest people in our workforce, these are our per diems, these are our part-timers who are just getting out of school, just coming into the workforce. Mostly untested, but they are by far, right, the on my screen all the time generation. They really know nothing else. They were basically born with a phone in their hands, right? Mostly because mom or dad just didn't want to deal with it, and instead of putting them in front of the television with Barney, they gave them their phone, and that was the fact of the matter. So what did the generations look like? Boomers, basically born 1946 to 1964, an ambitious lot. They wanted more than their parents. They were going to work hard, make money, save a lot of money, and they went into the workforce looking to build relationships. It was all about the 3 martini lunch and the having relationships with the people that you work with. They did support diversity in the workforce. Personal achievement was very important, right? Nothing was more important than the corner office, the title, making it. Literally think about every movie, rom-com from the 80s, right, that related to people making it. It was all about getting from the secretary, right, to that corner office. Gen Xers, 1965 to 1979, basically, we were the change masters. We were gonna come in and change the world. Boomers did a great job, they got everything started. Now we're gonna come in and make it better. We know how to build a better mousetrap because we have the benefit of kind of being introduced to computers and that whole, we have like the $6 million man, we have the technology to do better things. Only half of you got that, because I don't even know who the $6 million man is. Very tech savvy, very self-reliant. We did it on our own in a lot of ways, right? Put ourselves, not that our parents or the boomers didn't put themselves through school, but we knew we had to do it, because we didn't always get the money from mom and dad either. Definitely non-conformists, right? There's a different, better way to get things done, right? And what's interesting is, as Trish pointed out, and I actually never heard that term. What did you? Zennial. It's that those millennials who are also Gen Xers, they're kind of in that gap. And by far the biggest non-conformists within our group. Generation Y, 1980 to 1995, very hopeful, very optimistic, also incredibly tech savvy. Multitaskers. Now, I gotta be honest with you, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think the Gen Xers and the baby boomers are more multitaskers than this group. They tend to focus on one thing at a time. What this is referring to, multitasking, it's they'll start a project and then leave it alone for a little bit and start another project and then come back to the other one. So it's multitasking in stages, not really all at once. They expect flexibility, and I'll show you what that looks like in a few minutes. Resistant to traditional categorizations of people, right? This is really the first generation in a very long time that, well, ever, really, that was brought into a world where yes, we have segregation, and yes, we have our differences, but they weren't really brought up in that realm for the most part, right? And I can attest to this, that I learned more about the differences in people from my oldest kids than from growing up for the 40 years before that, because they were in, I went to a mostly white Catholic grammar school, a mostly white Catholic high school, and we just didn't have that that exposure, right? My kids went to public school in New York and came back with just a different understanding of people. So I think this millennial generation is the generation that are really going to be the change masters for us moving forward. And then Gen Z, born 1996 to 2012. Socially, they're a social group and well connected. They have friends literally all over the world, literally, because they game. My son has friends in Germany. Now at first I was freaked out by that, right? Because he might be chatting online on this online game with some 60-year-old freak in Germany. But they're smart and they're connected, and it has built a very high self-esteem for many. Again, they also demand flexibility, and I'll show you what that looks like. Emotionally attached to digital habits. It is impossible to get them to separate from this thing. It's impossible. Leave it in your locker, not on the dining room floor. Can't happen. They literally cannot separate it from their person. It's a fact. And for some of us older ones, it's kind of the same thing. Like, I'm on my phone because I use it for work. Okay. BS. Get off your phone. Okay, so boomers prefer monetary rewards, but also value flexibility. We want retirement planning, getting ready for the future. Most of you boomers are retiring in the next few years, right? In about, what, 6 weeks? Yeah. That recognition style, they want to be recognized for the work that they've done, their input to the more general cause. So here's my example. I'm going to do this in 4 different scenarios. Boomers. We started having kids, right? And our kids started to play sports. So it looks like this. And he left the room, and I'm annoyed now. Mr. Weatherhead, I know that I'm expected to work on the weekends, but my son is starting to play baseball, and I would really appreciate anything you could do to get me off on Saturday or a Sunday, so I can occasionally go see one of his games. So I would really appreciate that. Just let me know. I'll work extra during the week. I'll come in later, whatever has to be done. Thank you. So we boomers approached it from a respect, right? Not that everybody else doesn't, but it was more a matter of I know this is my responsibility. Whatever you can do for me would be greatly appreciated, and I'm going to work even harder for you if you do those things, right? Generation X value our bonuses, we value our stock options. Again, we want to prepare for the future. We prefer much more informal public recognition, right? You guys do it here every single month, right? Get people together, celebrate somebody's success. It's not about the promotion or the corner office. It's just thank you for doing a great job, right? So what does that look like? Good morning, Mr. Weatherhead. Call me Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. So my kid, she's starting to play lacrosse on weekends, and I'd really like to be able to see some of those games. So if it's possible, I'd like to be able to adjust the schedule where maybe every other week or at least once a month I can have that day off. I'll make sure that everything's covered, but I would just like your blessing to take the time off that I need. Okay? So, boomers, sorry, Gen X, we have an expectation that there's going to be some flexibility, right? That we can kind of dictate what's going to happen because we're willing, again, to do the extra work, do the extra time, but just because I'm supposed to work every Saturday doesn't mean that I necessarily have to, because I'm going to put people in place, right? Always develop a replacement for yourself. I'm going to put people in place that can handle the work so I can do what I have to do, right? Now we start getting into Generation Y, okay? And Jeff challenged me to do this in shorts and a t-shirt, and that's just not gonna happen, especially now that it's being filmed. So this is the best it's gonna get. So Generation Y, you want your stock options, actually very monetarily smart. And you know what it's from? It's from this, right? How do I invest money? We went to the guy at Fidelity, right? They went to some guy online who also wrote a book that is the #1 best-selling book amongst millennials in the world by like billions of copies. Don't ask me the name of it because I didn't read it. But very savvy, very smart. Again, we've given millennials a bad rap, and I'm going to kind of give them a bad rap with this scenario, but I think it's what a lot of us relate to, right? So they're going to walk in and they're going to go, "Good morning, Jeff. So I started playing softball on weekends, and I know that I'm supposed to work every weekend, but I really can't do that anymore because I've got this thing. So Saturdays just really aren't going to work for me most of the time. I'll do some, but I really need Saturdays off. Thank you." It demand flexibility. This is what I need. And I do a good job. I am a hard worker. So I should be able to get that if and when I need it, right? And the point is, as leaders, we have to understand that. And we have to become flexible. And it can't just be, well, listen, I work Saturdays, I work every Saturday, I work 100 hours a week, you have to do the same thing. That is not gonna fly, and it doesn't fly anymore. So we look for ways to communicate and to empathize and associate with our people that we're leading. Millennials are interesting because they span those 20 years, right? 95 to, no, I got that wrong. 85 to 2005. 9/11 was in there, right? And that had a big effect on all of us, but that generation, many of them, for the first years of their life, those images were all they saw on television and whatever. And it affected the way they think about the world. And we really have to take that into consideration. It's a form of PTSD that they're not willing to give up their lives for work, basically like we work, right? You got up in the morning, you went to work, you worked all day long, you got home, had a quick bite, changed my clothes and went to my second job, right? Because I had to take care of my family. You don't want to do that. So how do we make their jobs more, what's the word I'm looking for? How do we make their jobs, not easier, but more appealing for them to stay with us, okay? Now we get into Generation Z. Now they're a very interesting group of people. They tend to not really have, they have a really good work. See, I can't leave clothes on the floor. It's bad enough that it's crinkled. They'll show up to an interview with a marked t-shirt like this. Definitely gonna, I said I wasn't gonna put on the shorts and be on film, so this is the best that you can do. Okay? So their expectations are that, generally speaking, you're gonna need me and want me just because it's me, because I'm great. Because my helicopter mom stood there and made sure that when I was in class, you, the teacher, were paying special attention to me because I'm special, right? And this is what the expectation is. So what that scenario looks like is, hey Jeff, how you doing today? Awesome. Listen, I know that, like, I think I read something online when I applied for the job that you have to work weekends. Yeah, but see, I do things on the weekends. So I can work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and half of Friday. That's about it. You know, cool. Have a great day. And that's the expectation, right? We have all had those interviews in the last 2 years. We have, where it's just, well, okay. Now, our first reaction is, well, great, there's the door. We'll see you whenever. And obviously, if I came in with that kind of attitude, that would be the answer, right? But if they come in even looking like this, but they can carry on a conversation and they seem willing to learn and want to be part of whatever it is that we're doing, well then, why not give that opportunity? Let's see, what do they have to offer to our establishment? Again, really tech-savvy people, very social, able to maybe not connect on a personal one-on-one, right? But they understand the importance of connections. Kind of gets us back to the boomers, right? Where for the boomers it was all about establishing relationships. And the purpose of those relationships was to advance our careers and advance us in what we were doing. For the Gen Zs, it's not so much about advancing the career, but it's establishing relationships where I'm going to continue to grow as a person, and I'm going to get to know somebody else and maybe learn something else from them. I'm going to do the work that I like to do, that I want to do. Whether I become president and CEO, or I just stay doing what's important to me. What we have to do, and it's really hard for boomers, it's really hard for Gen Xers, right, is remember to stop saying, well, that's what I used to do, or That's what I went through. And the only way you're gonna learn is if you do this. Well, I got news for you. Handing anybody under the age of 30 that comes in, handing them a booklet of policies and procedures, you'd be better off giving them a picture book like they had when they were 4. This is, right? Why is all of our training online now? Why are all of our, you call it something different.
Reliance.
Yes, Reliance. Those are set up as PowerPoints with pictures and people telling stories, right? Because these are visual learners. They're not reader learners. So we have to adjust the things that we've done. I grew up reading reports. I hate reading reports, right? But that's what we did. They want a picture, give them a graph, give them pictures, and they'll learn much easier. We have to learn to adjust to that. It all comes down to engagement, right? Leaders who want to create high-performance workplaces should learn to recognize their own inherent work styles. Who am I? And this would lead into another presentation, if you'll have me back, about the type of leader that you are, or the type of person, as well as those of their colleagues. It's equally important for us to understand who we are, how we lead, how we want to be led, as much as the people that we are leading, right? I was always taught, or I always said, look, you have to think outside of the box. What does think outside of the box mean? Tell me.
Get creative.
Get creative, okay? What else?
Come up with different ideas.
Different. Look at it, right, from a different perspective. I argue that in order for you to think outside of the box, you need to understand the box that you're in first, right? So understand who you are, where you fit into the leadership, role, and then you can look at outside. What am I doing that's ineffective? Now, if you are having trouble with your teams, if there's dissent, or if they're just not following the rules, or whatever the issues might be, maybe it's one person who's just not getting it, right? From your perspective. Why don't we take a step back, and instead of saying, what is that person doing wrong, go to the third person, right? And say, what did Anthony do that might have caused this person to not understand their job? What could Anthony have done better to help Justin learn the I can't even say it because I'm so not as smart as Justin. But look at it from the outside. That's thinking outside of the box. You're stepping outside of yourself and looking at it from not a defensive perspective, but an offensive perspective. What could Anthony have done better, right? Now, you're not saying, well, I did this and I did that and I did this. You're saying, well, Anthony really only spent like an hour going over that. And maybe Anthony thought that, well, because he picked it up so quickly, they picked it up that quickly too. That might not be the case. And that's what we have to do for everybody, but especially these younger groups. So some statistics, 76, these are generalized. 76% of Gen Z employees are willing to start from the bottom of the corporate ladder. They want to learn everything about a particular job. They're willing to start low so they attain more knowledge and meet as many people as they can. 77% of Gen Z adults in America that over the age of 18 say that work is one of the most common stresses for them. It only comes second to money. Now, think about that. 18 to 24-year-olds are stressed about money. 81% of them. Why do you think that is? How many of us still have college loans? How many of us are still worried about our kids who have college loans, right? And having that monthly fight with the wife about, well, should we just pay it off? Should we help them? How are they going to learn? It's a stressor. Money is a stressor, and it largely revolves around schooling. 1 in 10 Gen Zs say they would rather spend time reading the iTunes terms and conditions than attend formal workplace training. Says a lot, right? A lot more stuff up here. There was one that I wanted to. Oh, this is talk about bipolar. 21% of Gen Z said that they want a stable schedule, and 23% expect that they would also be offered flexible schedules. Right? I expect that I'm going to have one, and also I expect that it just comes with any job I apply for. I'm just automatically going to be able to come and go as I please, do what I got to do, and unfortunately, Mom and Dad, we did this to them. In a lot of cases, it's really our fault. We have, my wife is a mama bear. Now, we taught our kids, they gotta take care of themselves, they have to work hard, all that stuff. But when push comes to shove, if the kid came home a little bit upset about something, Mom was all over that. And oftentimes she had one on her hip when she was talking to the teacher. So it's a thing. And how many of you have gotten a call from your employee's parent wanting to know why they had the schedule they had or couldn't have off on Mother's Day or whatever? Well, you don't work for me, I'm sorry. And they're 18, so, you know, that's between them and us. It's an interesting dynamic. It makes me laugh, because my first job, I worked for Restaurant Associates. Nick Valenti, bless his soul, nice man, but tough as nails. And all I could think about is if he actually got a phone call from my mother. It reminded me of, did you ever watch Everybody Loves Raymond? There was, when Robert was going for the FBI. Yeah. Right? That's exactly it. Like, Nick, I need to talk to you. I haven't seen Anthony on Mother's Day in like 4 years. He's taking off. So, the biggest 3 big drivers that result in engaged employees across the board. This is across the board. Belief in the organizational mission. We have to have a purpose, a substantial purpose. It can't be, we're gonna make money, right? It's gotta be something that we can all believe in. And that's where we get the most buy-in, is when we have people working for us that believe in that mission. Trust me, anybody under the age of 40, right? First thing they do when they go to that website is look for the mission and values. I guarantee you that is what they're doing, because they want to see if this is an organization that I can wrap my arms around, okay? Second, it's about the people. They're going to interview you more than you interviewing them, so they can make sure that it's a great fit. Belief that the organization provides excellent care to the patient, the customer, the resident, right? I have to do something that's purposeful. Knowing their ideas and suggestions are valued by the organization. Everybody tells me I was very successful when I got here. Why was I so successful? What's the one thing I did for the first week? Listen. I didn't open my mouth. All I did was listen to the employees as well as to the residents, right? Because their input matters. They're smart people, probably smarter than we are, right? What's that song? It's a Wonderful World, right? They'll know much more than I'll ever learn. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. One of those two. It's a fact. We, it doesn't matter if we're leading 10 people or 1,000 people. It all is relative, right? Jeff is the president and CEO of 300 or so employees, right? He probably knows most of them by name, and has somewhat of a relationship with them, right? But Jeff's main responsibility is to, as a leader and a teacher, is to create that culture with all of you, so that we can then bring that to the employees. So understanding that we have to focus on individual values. Every person is different, right? It's no longer the factory assembly line where everybody is the same, right? We have to treat everybody fair. Everybody's got to be treated the same. In certain respects, absolutely, right? There has to be a standard, but we're all individuals, and we have to learn to be flexible, and we can do that by understanding the data that's out there about the different generations, and get to know your people. Just talk to them, have that conversation, right? The annual evaluation should be, number one, nothing different, nothing unknown should be discussed at that meeting, right? But it's usually about 15 minutes of great work, this is what you do, or whatever, and then tell me about you. Tell me about your experience. Personal, yes, but tell me about what's going on and why your work can't be done. Or why is this one issue of your work a problem, or you're having trouble with. What can we do to make this work? And maybe that is a little bit of a flexible schedule. Maybe it's somebody just needs a little bit of time off. Maybe they just need more support from you, right? We're not going to learn that unless we have those conversations. Align motivation and recognition methods with individuals' frame of reference. Your little loose site plaque that says Employee of the Month is wonderful, and it makes us feel good. But do this new generation, right, that's what's important for them. Now, you do a wonderful thing. You put money on it, you give them a plaque, you give them a parking space, right? I'm all about the parking space. It's a long freaking walk back there. Although that's where the Employee of the Month parking space is, right? It's gotta be right in front, come on. See, that's a boomer. Base expectations and assumptions, not on your own frame of reference, but on that mission, that purpose. Again, step outside of your own box and look at it. Look inside from out, and then you'll understand how to really connect with your employees, right? It all comes down to one thing, communication. Listen and communicate constantly, every day. We're all different. Everyone in this room is different for different reasons. But when we bring it in age variations and the way we think, we as leaders really have to focus on that, on the individual, and how do we make their experience better. That's basically it. Any questions?